Good morning. Welcome to the Shrine of Remembrance and the 2023 Victorian State Remembrance Day service. My name is Group Captain Annette Holian and I'm a Shrine Governor. We will begin the Remembrance Day service with a smoking ceremony and welcome to country by Bunurong Land Council Aboriginal Corporation representatives, Uncle Mark Brown and Danny West.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Mark Brown, and I'm a Gunditjmara man on my mother's side, and a Bunurong man on my father's side. I'm an elder and senior cultural heritage officer at the Bunurong Land Council, and today I have Danny West with me, cultural heritage officer and emerging leader, and we're here to welcome you to Bunurong country. But before we do that, we acknowledge and pay our respects to all of our ancestors, our elders, and our community members, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge the continuous and unbroken connection to country for the Bunurong people. We also like to acknowledge and pay respects to all Aboriginal, Torres Strait and traditional owners of this country who work, rest, live or play on Bunurong country. Thank you for being here with us. But today on these sacred lands, we gather in the spirit of respect, unity, and reconciliation. This ceremony that we are about to undertake is a ceremony that has been done for countless generations, taught to us by our ancestors, passed down by our elders, and accepted and loved and passed on by all of our community members. The smokes that we are about to inhale and bathe in are our foods and our medicines. They represent all of our people who have a connection to these mountains, these rivers, the bushlands, and the coastal areas that belong to Bunurong country. We smoke the manigum and the eucalypt. This helps our respiratory systems. It's our medicines and our foods. It's a parent tree. It teaches all the other trees and plants around it how to grow and live. It teaches them how to bring in the animals and the life. We use the cherry bellart, the child of the tree. It learns from the manigum, teaches other trees and plants and animals, but also provides foods and medicines. Represents the children of Bunurong, the children and all the ancestors. And we smoke the silver wattle. The silver wattle represents the strengths of our communities as we come together and walk these lands as a unit and a family. It's the strongest wood we have on country, representing the strengths of our peoples and all the hardships and the good times that we've been through. We do these to welcome people to our country, to our tribes, and to our families. We do this to connect to our ancestors, the sacred lands on which we stand, and the dreaming, always constant and flowing. By doing this, we connect to our storylines and our songlines, and we bring everybody together. So today we'd like to welcome you to Bunurong country with Wamanjinka. Wamanjinka balakyaakya. Ngata Bunurong balagbikbik. Welcome. Welcome to beautiful Bunurong country. Walk her with soft feet and an open heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Mark and Danny. On this day, the 11th of November, we come together at this place and online to continue the unbroken tradition of remembrance for the service and sacrifice of hundreds of thousands of Australians in wars past and present. We're joined by many distinguished guests, including members of the Victorian and federal governments, consuls representing nations across the world, and representatives of the current serving and veteran community. I make special mention of the Honourable Jacinta Allen, Premier of Victoria, and Senator Wreath representing the Prime Minister of Australia. Today marks the armistice, the anniversary of which was the agreement that ended fighting in the First World War. At 11 a.m. on the 11th of November 1918, fighting in Western Europe ceased and the guns fell silent after 4 years of continuous warfare and millions of lives lost. For a time, the world knew peace. This day marks 105 years since that day. Here, as the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month approaches, we come together to reflect in 1 minute's silence. We commemorate the lives lost in the pursuit of peace and with the enduring hope that the trouble spots in our world today do not escalate and that we may find a way to live with tolerance and respect for each other. Remembrance Day and the Shrine have been linked since this building was dedicated on the 11th of November 1934. On that day, 300,000 people gathered here, testament to the devastating impact of the First World War on all Victorians. The Shrine continues as a place to mourn. We mourn our loved ones lost on duty. Today, we come together to honour the service and sacrifice of all Victorians and Australians who have served in war, conflict, peacemaking and peacekeeping. To express our gratitude to those who gave their all to secure our future and to recognise their humanity, their courage, their fortitude and dedication. Service and sacrifice continue in the actions of more than 40,000 members of the Australian Defence Force who have engaged in war and warlike operations in this century in Timor, Iraq and Afghanistan. We remember those who served in Bougainville, East Timor and the Solomon Islands. Our servicemen and women have also served in bushfire and flood relief and during the COVID-19 pandemic. We also remember how the grief of families 105 years ago is the same grief, heartache, pride and love felt by families of the more than 60 members of the Australian Defence Force who have lost their lives in service since the year 2000. We remember the families of veterans who struggle to reconcile the loss of their loved ones to suicide. We remember the service and sacrifice of the more than 400,000 Victorians who have served and continue to serve. And we contemplate the impact of today's wars on the people of Gaza, Israel and Ukraine. Throughout history, the tumult of conflict has ignited a transformative spark within artists and musicians, shaping their expressions in profound ways. From the First World War sketches of Will Dyson, the works of World War II artist Murray Griffin whilst a POW that show the suffering of all those caught up in conflict. The compositions of John Schumann, who captured the essence of Vietnam conflict for us with songs such as I Was Only 19, and the powerful works of artist George Gittos that provide commentary where words fall short and the influence of war on artistic creation is undeniable. In times of war, artists become witnesses and interpreters. Their works convey the raw emotions and resilience forged from chaos. a lens through which we may remember, learn and contemplate the human condition through the most dreadful of lived experience. Artistic expression challenges us to confront the complexities of war and peacekeeping and to despair the creative potential lost in conflicts throughout history. Catharsis is an important means through which veterans may explore, resolve and reconcile emotional challenges post-service. We are joined today by 3 veterans who understand the power of artistic expression, both as an educative tool and as a therapeutic one. Welcome Air Commodore Rowan Story, Private James Farquharson and Lieutenant Commander Andrew Stokes. In this, the 89th year the Shrine has commemorated Remembrance Day, we reflect on the power of art, literature, sculpture and music as we strive for peace and heal the wounds of service. Today's ceremony is kindly supported by the Australian Defence Force. We are joined by the Royal Australian Air Force Band, the Australian Army 2nd 10th Battery, 9th Regiment, and a tri-service guard party made up from the Australian Army, the Royal Australian Air Force and the Royal Australian Navy. I now invite the Half Guard to march on. The Governor of Victoria, Her Excellency Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardner, is now arriving. Her Excellency will be greeted by Captain Stephen Bowater, Chair of the Shrine of Remembrance Trustees, the Honourable Jacinta Allen, Premier of Victoria, and the Victorian Senator, the Honourable Ralph Ciccone, representing the Prime Minister. Please be upstanding for the arrival of the Governor, which will be acknowledged with a royal salute. Please be seated. Observing tradition, the Governor will now inspect the Guard. The Governor will now make her way to the sanctuary within the Shrine Monument. You will be able to watch proceedings in the sanctuary on the screens on either side of the forecourt.
Vanguard! Roll salute! Present! Up!
A catafalque party will soon form. The catafalque party are sentries who guard the symbolic grave of our deceased veterans. Today's catafalque party comprises members of the Victorian Police Shrine Guard. Shrine Guard catafalque party, take post. In the sky towards the city. The Royal Australian Air Force P-51 Mustang from 100 Squadron has just overflown us. It's flown by Wing Commander Jason Easthope, the commanding officer of the unit. He will later he's passing over the shrine in a tribute to Remembrance Day, and he'll be returning later in the service, flying west to east. If you are able, I invite you to please stand as we commence the ceremonial part of today's service. The Governor of Victoria, Her Excellency Professor the Honourable Margaret Gardiner, will now lay a wreath at the Stone of Remembrance on behalf of the people of Victoria. I now invite Private James Farquharson, Air Commodore Rowan Story and Lieutenant Commander Andrew Stokes to place their wreaths on behalf of those they have served alongside. Private James Farquharson will now proceed to the lectern to recite the Ode of Remembrance. Immediately following the ode, bugle calls and gunfire will announce the start and end of the 1 minute of silence commencing at 11 a.m. If you are able to, please remain standing throughout.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them, lest we forget.
Please be seated.
Vanguard. Order. Up. Vanguard. Ready.
The Royal Australian Air Force Australian-built P-51 Mustang from 100 Squadron will again shortly fly over the Shrine in tribute to Remembrance Day. The RAF Band and the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra Chorus will now perform the Old 100th Psalm tune.
Sing to the Lord with cheer.
Thank you, Melbourne Symphony Orchestra Chorus and the RAF Band for that very moving performance. I now invite Shrine Young Ambassador Gabriel Lateo to recite In Flanders Fields.
In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, but now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
I now invite Her Excellency, the Governor of Victoria, to present the Remembrance Day Address.
The Honourable Jacinta Allen MP, Premier of Victoria, Senator Raf Ciccone representing the Prime Minister, the Honourable Natalie Suleiman MP, Minister for Veterans, John Pesutto MP, Leader of the Opposition, Members of State and Federal Parliament, the Right Honourable the Lord Mayor Sally Capp, Captain Stephen Bowater, Chair and Trustee of the Shrine of Remembrance, Commissioners and Senior Public Servants, Senior Officers of the Australian Defence Force, Members of the Consular Corps, Dr Robert Webster, President RSL Victoria, former and current servicemen and women, and all the distinguished guests and the many people who are here today for this important remembrance. Let me begin by acknowledging that we meet on the unceded lands of the Boonwurrung people and pay my respects to their elders past and present, and recognise any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders present here today. Today marks 105 years since the first Armistice Day of 1918. Armistice negotiations began in a single train carriage stationed in a clearing of the Campagne forest. There, representatives from France, Great Britain and Germany assured the beginning of peace within Europe and an end to an international conflict that had raged for more than 4 years. Unfortunately, not the last. It was a war that cost Australia deeply. At a time when Australia's population was less than 5 million, more than 416,000 men voluntarily enlisted, and more than 60,000 of them were killed on battlefields across the Western Front and the Middle East. Indeed, in my own family, one of my great uncles was wounded at Ypres. On that first Armistice Day in 1918, the reaction to this newfound peace was mixed. Soldiers on the front described feelings of joy and surprise. Many expressed a sense of disbelief. At home, the armistice brought conflicting emotions as well. Women faced a shift in the roles that they had taken up. Indigenous soldiers returning from war found that perhaps the wartime camaraderie didn't always extend to the home front. And families began the long and anxious wait for the return of loved ones. Those that did return carried the physical and psychological effects of war, and there were high mortality rates in the post-war period, reflecting the damage that had been done to those who returned. More than a century on, 11th of November remains a day of mixed emotions as we remember, and really strongly remember, the Australian women and men who fought in wars and armed conflicts across the world. for our peace and security. British soldier and survivor of the Burma Railway, Eric Lomax, once said, "Remembering is not enough if it simply hardens hate." It's important that we use this day to remember the significant sacrifice of our many brave servicewomen and men, and that we remember those struggling with the physical and psychological scars left by a conflict. And we remember those who never made it home. But it's also important that we remember the lessons offered by these conflicts, to commit ourselves and our community to the causes of tolerance and understanding, to embrace the differences of others rather than shy away from them. Not far from here, the Australian-Turkish Friendship Memorial sits in the King's Domain Gardens. This memorial sculpture demonstrates the role of artistic expression in bringing to us the implications of war. The seeds of a Turkish pine sit alongside an Australian casuarina, representing Gallipoli's role in planting the seeds of friendship between our two nations. Inscribed along the base of that memorial sculpture are the words of Turkey's first president, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. He argued, "There is no difference between the Johnnies and the Mehmets," and that Allied soldiers who lost their lives at Anzac Cove are now our sons as well. Those same words are written on a monument at Gallipoli, tying our two nations together through shared memory and a commitment to heeding the lessons of the past. Much has changed since that first Armistice Day here in Victoria and across the nation. As Victoria grows and changes, it's more important than ever that we reflect on and learn from the lessons of the past. That when faced with difference, we choose curiosity. When met with intolerance, we choose understanding. And when confronted with conflict, we pursue peace, lest we forget.
Thank you, Governor. In 2010, diplomat and songwriter Fred Smith was serving in Afghanistan in the Mentoring and Reconstruction Task Force in Taron Kot, where I twice served as a surgeon in the NATO Role 2 hospital. On the morning of the 7th of June, 2 sappers and their explosive detection dog were killed in the Mirabad Valley. After attending the ramp ceremony to farewell the deceased sappers on their journey home, he wrote the song that he will now perform, called Sapper's Lullaby. I now welcome Fred Smith.
Up from the roll to and down past the gate, out to the flight line. We stood in the sun, slouch hat and gun, as 2 caskets passed us by, and followed the Padre onto the Herc and out into the pale summer sky. We walked back to Poppies, then went back to work with the dust still in our eyes. So soldiers, sing me your sapper's lullaby. You give it your all, knowing if you should fall, that all good things must die. These young engineers, whose job is to clear the road so we may pass, they're always out front, and when they bear the brunt, man, it happens fast. Sapper D. Smith had a wife and a son, the apple of his eye. Snowy Moreland was just 21, way too young to die. So soldiers, sing me your sapper's lullaby. You give it your all, knowing if you should fall, that all good things must die. So go call your mother, call your old man on that welfare line, and tell him you love him while you still can, 'cause all good things must die. Soldiers, sing me your sapper's lullaby. You give it your all, knowing if you should fall, that all good things must die. All good things must die.
Thank you for that evocative and emotional piece, Fred. I think I've got the dust in my eyes again. The wreaths will now be laid. Please come forward once I've announced your name to place your wreath. To begin, I invite the Honourable Jacinta Allen, Premier of Victoria. Senator Raf Ciccone, representing the Prime Minister of Australia. Parliamentary representatives and the Lord Mayor, members of the Victorian State and Federal Parliament. Officer Ken Robertson, laying a wreath on behalf of the Chief of Defence Force, Senior Defence Force for Victoria, Group Captain Lloyd Sullick, Captain Ainsley Moorthorpe and Major General Jason Blaine to lay wreaths as well. Victorian Veterans Council, the Victorian Multicultural Commission, and the Deputy Commissioner, Victorian Department of Veterans Affairs. Representing the emergency services for Victoria, the Chief Commissioner of Victoria Police, Fire Rescue Commissioner, and the Chief Executive Officer of Ambulance Victoria. Representatives here. Members of Veterans Associations. I now invite the Shrine Young Ambassadors to lay wreaths representing the school students of Victoria. And anyone else among us who wishes to lay a floral tribute on the steps, you may now do so. In the concluding part of our service, the Royal Australian Air Force Band will play Advance Australia's Fair, supported by the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra Chorus. Immediately following the anthem, a flock of pigeons will be released from the balcony, just as they were at the opening of the Shrine on Remembrance Day 1934. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the Australian National Anthem performed by the Air Force Band. Let the pigeons fly in symbolic expression of our shared hope for enduring peace. We thank the nephews of able seaman Teddy Sheehan, VC, Jerry and Ed Sheehan, and David and Sydney McMeekin for providing the pigeons for this tribute. This brings us to the conclusion of today's remembrance service. Please remain standing for the departure of Her Excellency, the Governor of Victoria. The Governor will be accorded a royal salute as she leaves. Thank you. Please be seated. The Guard will now march off. The ceremony has now concluded. The sanctuary will open shortly and you may view the natural ray of light from 12 midday. We thank the Victorian Office for Veterans for supporting today's service. We also thank the Royal Australian Navy, the Australian Army and the Royal Australian Air Force, Victoria Police and the Shrine Guard for their support. We thank Uncle Mark and Danny, our veterans, artists, particularly Fred Smith, Shrine Young Ambassador Gabriel Lateo, the RAF Band and the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra Chorus for their participation. And we thank you for joining us here today at the Shrine and online. Thank you for taking this moment to pause and reflect on this day when we recall the fragile joy of peace at war's end. Finally, in joining us for this service, you have participated in giving remembrance. Thank you for your support. On behalf of the Shrine Trustees, good day.